Curslings. Today we're talking about this mad mama, who after nearly 2 weeks of silence finally has uploaded to TikTok as of Saturday. According to her oldest daughter Jax, Veronica was released from the hospital on Monday, June 24th. Her subsequent absence on social media would be felt across her various platforms, leading many people to speculate as to why she wasn't posting, with some even flocking to Jax's page with questions and concerns, as well as to Veronica's older sister Diana. Finally, on July 6th, Veronica uploaded this TikTok titled simply Update. In it, Veronica explained that she was feeling much better now. She also re-explained how the high levels of toxins in her blood had caused her to hallucinate. A lot, even after leaving the ICU.
Even after I first woke up, I still was very, very confused and was seeing things and hearing things for days.
Now, Veronica had already talked about the hallucinations she had experienced in her previous TikToks, even going so far as to say that she was seeing giants at one point.
When I finally did wake up, I thought it had been months. I was really, really confused. The ammonia levels in my blood were so high that I was literally seeing giants.
But this time, Veronica gave more details about what it was that she was hallucinating.
I was seeing things, even I would start to wake up and I would think that I thought I was in an airport at one point. I thought I was on a pirate ship at one point.
And how those hallucinations were distorting her sense of reality, including overhearing conversations between doctors and nurses that never happened.
So as I started to wake up, things started to look more clear, but I was still hearing things and seeing things that weren't real. I heard the doctors saying things like, in order to be strong, you have to endure pain, and that's why we want her to endure pain or whatever. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've been through plenty of pain. The doctor would not have said that. What the heck was I thinking?
And that were crazy sounding in hindsight.
I also was imagining that there was this monster above my room. And I could hear the doctors and stuff talking about sacrificing me to it. Yeah. So I was out of my mind.
And apparently about even having a boyfriend.
I don't have a boyfriend. I don't know what the fuck was wrong with me. I don't know why I thought I did. I was just very, very confused.
A delusion that she admitted had persisted long after her other hallucinatory symptoms had abated.
When I finally left the ICU, I stopped seeing bugs on the wall, but I was still convinced I had a boyfriend.
For obvious reasons, a lot of people are calling bullshit on this claim. For one, because if true, it means that the ambulance likely picked her up from her house. Setting aside how traumatizing that could have been for her kids, it also doesn't make sense if she actually was taken to Oswego like she said that she was. It's also worth noting here that this creator, Jessica Danielle, who I'll link down below, fact-checked her story, and she found nothing in the dispatch logs for the date that Veronica said an ambulance took her to Oswego. So it is possible that Veronica was taken on a different day, or that she confused hospitals, or that she didn't go by ambulance at all. Fact is, we don't actually know how this played out. We can only extrapolate from the information Veronica has provided us, and even then, it's not 100%. As Veronica has admitted multiple times that her sense of time and sense of reality was all over the place during her hospitalization.
Being in a coma is so wild because it's you remember things in the wrong order, or things happen more than once. It's a weird ass dream that you can't just wake up from.
Now, the second reason that people call BS on the imagined boyfriend claim is because Veronica was publicly interacting with her childhood friend, Nate, on Instagram earlier this year. In fact, when Reddit found him, Veronica and Nate unfollowed each other and the pair tried to hide their connection, leading many to speculate that he likely is her current beau and she's trying to cover it up. Given that Veronica has been actively dating for at least a year now and casually looking for the last 2 years, I'm inclined to believe that her boyfriend, or at least a relationship with a guy she likes, is very much a real thing, and that she's trying to downplay it or damage control. Veronica also claims that CPS actually didn't trick her after all.
So I came home, not this past Monday, but the one before it. The next day I had court, and CPS was very nice. They said they did not want to take my kids. They just really thought I was dying.
And that several of the kids have already come home, including her 10-year-old son.
Because they said they just wanted me to get better, to make sure I could take care of the kids before they started sending them home. And I know what you're thinking, like, why would you trust CPS? Well, because Mara, Dash, Darla, Marvelous, they're home already.
With her younger daughter, M, also expected to be home Monday, July 8th.
And Martalia is going to be home Monday. So far, it doesn't seem like I have any reason to believe that they were lying to me, because the kids have already been coming home.
Many familiar with CPS and Veronica's part of New York State weren't surprised by this news. Disheartened, but otherwise unsurprised. So much so that it seems that it is very possible that the kids were only taken temporarily while Veronica was sick. And now that she's out of the hospital, the reunification process has begun.
So it seems like they are not against me. They're genuinely trying to help me, which is a relief, because I know the last thing I posted, I was like freaking out because I was like, oh my God, did they trick me when my brain wasn't working? I was so scared, but it seems like, no, they really just wanted to help me because they thought that I was going to, and I almost did.
This TikTok, posted by her sister Diana on Friday-ish, also seems to substantiate this story, as well as this Instagram post by Diana's daughter, where it appears that the pair assisted Veronica in fetching her 13-year-old daughter Dee from foster care. For obvious reasons, I've blurred the caption to protect her privacy as to why she needed to be picked up. Now, both Diana and Jax have publicly stated over the last 2 weeks that Veronica was working on reunification and had started to get custody of her kids back. So based on Veronica's update video, Diana's post, and this post from Diana's daughter, this does seem to be the case, or at least partially the case, in that some of the kids have been allowed to return. What is confusing about this, however, to me at least, is that on the 22nd and 23rd of June, Veronica claimed the opposite, that her friend, who we now know is a woman named Tanya, told her it could take up to a year for her to get her kids back.
So one of my friends has one of my kids, and I was like, why are you acting like you have to get her a bed? It's only a couple of weeks. She'll be fine. Just let her go home. And she was like, well, no, I have to be her foster mom now. And I was like, for a couple of weeks. And she was like, no, CPS said it's going to be for like a year. I was like, what the fuck?
There were also confusing claims about the state of her home from CPS, as on the 21st, Veronica mentioned that she needed to fix things up to get her kids back, linking her Cash App in the comments below.
I do have my Cash App in my bio if anyone wants to donate to help. I'm obviously not working right now.
And then, on the 23rd, she said that CPS lied and said there wasn't any running water at her house.
Oh yeah, and then another thing, the girl that has my daughter, she was like, oh yeah, and there's no running water at your house.
She also admitted over the course of her TikToks on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd that she was worried about the kids not having enough food, as she had the food stamps in her purse with her.
I didn't even leave the food stamps at home. They were in my purse.
She also conflictingly said that she couldn't send money home to help Adam.
So I couldn't afford to send enough money.
And then that she could, including to potentially pay the water bill.
So then I contact Adam, and I'm like, Adam, why didn't you just tell me there's no running water at the house? I'll send you some money.
Which in turn left people with more questions than answers, that unfortunately this TikTok did not really address or attempt to clarify. So if you want to do that, Ronnie, we'd really appreciate it. As for Dee, Veronica claims that his paperwork is in the mail. Once it arrives, she'll be able to sort his birth certificate and social security number and begin the process of getting him back.
And as soon as I get Donnie's documents in the mail, he'll be coming home too.
This also struck people as odd, as just a month ago, she was making excuses for why she still hadn't sorted his paperwork yet.
But I'm not going to be able to get his health insurance back on until I get his birth certificate and his social security card. And there's nothing I can do.
Something that she's had the last 4 years to do. Yet, miraculously, in 3 weeks, she's seemingly resolved it, and she suddenly has the correct forms. Now, it could be that CPS helped her fast-track things, or that it really wasn't that difficult as she made it out to be, or something else. We really don't know. Whatever the case, folks weren't happy about this little tidbit either, as again, she's had 4 years to fix it. It should have never gotten to this point to begin with. Then Veronica said this.
Modi tested positive for lead.
I'm sorry. What? Lead poisoning. That's a bit of an oversight, isn't it? Just a bit. At the same time, it's also really not that surprising, as Veronica does live in an older house that she and Marty had been fixing up. So how her 2-year-old got lead poisoning really could have come from a multitude of sources. For example, he could have gotten it from eating paint chips, as he was frequently left unattended on the floor, including to sleep. Or it could have come from cheap or even vintage toys, like the sort you would get from the dollar store, thrift store, Temu, etc. Or the pipes, especially if Veronica used tap water to prepare his formula, which is apparently not that common in the United States, according to the comments I read on Reddit. You can see why. Ground contamination is another possibility, or even just dust particles that were kicked up from renovations or just from general house wear and tear. It's hard to know without a proper inspection, which, according to Veronica, she will be receiving from the Department of Health.
So I've got to have the health department figure out everywhere the lead is so I can get it all taken care of, and CPS said they're going to help me with that too, so that the rest of the kids can come home.
Veronica's 2-year-old testing positive for lead poisoning also wasn't surprising in general to many in her anti-community, as for a long time now, many have expressed concerns for M's seemingly slow, if not stunted, development, something which lead poisoning could contribute to. The part that really gets me, though, is that lead testing on children under the age of 2 is mandatory in the state of New York. So the fact that the state discovered this and not Veronica is telling here, as it means that M likely hadn't had his annual checkup for at least a year, if not longer. It's also unknown if the state has screened the other younger children or if they plan to, given that they're sending someone from the health department to identify the sources of lead in Veronica's home to have it resolved before letting the littles back.
The babies are going to be home too, but the only thing slowing that up is that Modi tested positive for lead, so I've got to have the health department figure out everywhere the lead is so I can get it all taken care of, and CPS said they're going to help me with that too, so that the rest of the kids can come home.
I really hope that CPS will have the others tested just to be sure. Regardless, the fact that her toddler has lead poisoning at all understandably pissed a lot of people off. Not because her house has lead, that's going to happen with older homes, especially on the East Coast, but because the testing is mandated, and still, Veronica didn't know until he was removed from her care. Worse, if his lead poisoning and potential cognitive delays are from Veronica and Marty DIY renovating their house, that's also kind of really shitty. Because not only did Veronica not keep up with his doctor's appointments, they also did not take the proper precautions to protect the kids from possible exposure. But since we don't actually know how this happened, I'm choosing to believe, or at least hope, that it wasn't anything serious and the problem can be easily rectified. Veronica's update video also substantiated Jax's claims that Marty hasn't really been around since January of this year, explaining that her friend Tanya was the friend who babysat her kids when she flew down to Florida to see her grandmother at the beginning of the year.
My friend Tanya, she would have taken the kids, but she already has a lot of kids, and because if they would have known it was just going to be for a few days, it wouldn't have been a problem. Like, Tanya babysat my kids when I went to go visit my grandmother in January, so she's used to watching my kids for me.
In fact, at the time, Veronica even addressed the rumors about Marty still living in her basement.
My ex does not live in my basement.
Explaining irritably that he'd had one supervised visit and that was more than he deserved and that it wouldn't be continuing.
He came over because the children wanted to see him and he needed to be supervised with the kids. He shouldn't have even been given supervised visits because of how awful he was. And he thought that if he just played nice long enough, that all of his bad deeds would be forgiven. But his bad deeds have not been forgiven. In fact, they've just compounded. They've compounded so much so that he won't even be getting supervised visits with the kids anymore.
Veronica also promised in that January video that she'd explain more when she got home.
He doesn't live in my basement. I would never want to live with him ever again. And really, I should never have lived with him in the first place. And there's a lot more that I want to say on this, and I will address it later when I get home. But right now I'm visiting my grandmother.
But she never did. I wonder why. Anyway, Veronica ends her update TikTok by promising that she'll be posting more soon.
And I'll be posting more soon. I just wanted to at least get this update made so that you guys wouldn't be so worried.
What many found surprising, myself included, was that she didn't show any proof that some of her kids were actually home, which you'd think wouldn't be a difficult task for a literal family vlogger to do, right? Which means that until she posts again, something she has yet to do, all we currently have to go by is Veronica's unreliable narration and the posts made by Diana and her daughter, which really isn't a whole hell of a lot when you zoom out on it. And even if it is completely true and her kids are home or in the process of returning, I still personally don't think that Veronica is being entirely forthright about this situation and how things played out. In fact, I think she's purposely leaning into her mental state during her hospitalization to obscure the holes in her story and the questions people have had about them, as technically she did have hallucinations. She technically was in the ICU. She technically was in a coma. So technically she can say whatever she wants, and we can't fully say for sure whether it's true or not, at least not with another source or some kind of documentation to cross-reference or fact-check her story against. And we all know how much Veronica loves her technical truths. So for now, we have to continue taking her word at face value, whatever that might be worth. That being said, the through lines of Veronica's stories do tend to be fairly consistent at their core. It's the details that get iffy with Veronica, as she frequently omits things, reveals half-truths, and only exposes key details some of the time, which in turn tends to muddy the waters rather than clarify them, which is absolutely what happened here, for better or worse. Mostly worse, maybe? I mean, technically, there is no such thing as bad press, and her TikTok has grown a bit since her posts on June 21st. So I guess we'll just have to see what she does next. Goodness knows it'd be nice if she'd actually clarify things in a coherent and easily parsed way, as it would save her a lot of headaches and confusion, and it would also make my life a hell of a lot easier. Not to be selfish, but also, ma'am. But knowing Veronica, she'll probably just add more to the fire rather than quench it, so we'll just have to cross that burning bridge when we get to it. Anyway, that's it for me. I want to thank everyone for liking, commenting, and subscribing, with a big, big thanks to all of my members. As always, you guys are rad, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!